Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. This video is something I'm really excited to present to you. I've been working really hard on it. I took every eyeshadow that I own and I sorted them all into color categories and I swatched them in color families for you today. And it was a really fun way for me to go and dip my fingers into every shadow that I own, really get a feel for the formula and figure out if I have any of the same shades. A lot of times we'll compare shades within the same palette or from the same brand, but it's not as often that you see colors compared across different brands, unless you're using Temptalia's website, of course. I will be answering the age-old question of which brand makes the best black eyeshadows, so stay tuned for that. Let me know if you'd like me to do this in any other category in my collection. Maybe you want me to do this with lip products or blushes or something. Let me know. This was a lot of fun to do. These are the silvers and grays that I have in my collection. It's odd because when you look at them in the palette or as a single, they come off as very gray, but then when you swatch them next to each other, you're really able to see the undertones and the little details about them that show that they're not a true gray or silver. So this first one over here is Diamond Dust. This is a Stila Glitter and Glow. Very shiny, very metallic, really, really pretty. It has both elements of silver and gold in it, but I would say it pulls more silver, at least it does on my skin tone. This next one is Cyborg. This is from the Anastasia Beverly Hills Sultry palette, and in the palette it looks very silver, but when you swatch it next to the other ones, you can see that there's actually quite a bit of pink, like a pinky purple to it. This one I don't consider to be a true silver. I show it in another color category in the future, but this one is Filigree by Clionadh, and it's a very silvery purple, and it's a silver with like a purple undertone, and it's gorgeous. This one here in the middle is High Wire by Makeup Geek. Once again, it is a shimmer, very high shine, and I would say this one is probably the most silver shade that you're going to find in my collection. The one next to it is Substance. This is from the Stila in the Soul palette. This one is a more of a satin shade. The one next to it is Slate All Day. This is from the Milani Bold Obsessions palette. Once again, I would consider it to be more of a satin, and this one is more of like a brownie taupey gray. The next two are the only mattes that I have that I would consider to be in the gray family. This first one here is Slate, and this is from the Anastasia Beverly Hills Sultry palette. And this one I would say is a gray with a more purple undertone. And then this one here is Tombstone. This is from the Strobe Cosmetics Creepy Cute palette. And I would say this is more of like a true gray, almost a bluish gray. This one's going to be a little bit tougher to see because these are all pretty much the color of my skin, but these are all of my white cream shades. The majority of them are matte. The only one that isn't is this shade right here. This first shade is from the e.l.f. Modern Metals palette. It's the second shade in the palette. It's kind of like a white gold, and it's very, very, very light. It's one of the lightest shades that I own. The next shades from here on out are matte, and it doesn't surprise me at all that I have so many of these because the vast majority of the palettes that I own have at least one cream shade in them. This one is from the Tarte Bloom palette. It's the shade Charmer. This one next to it is Fancy Vanilla from the Milani Most Loved Mattes palette. The one next to that, it has a little bit more of a pinky undertone. That's from the Milani Bold Obsessions palette. It's in the shade Can't Pink Straight. This next one, once again, a little bit more of a peachy yellow undertone. That is Fresh from the Anastasia Beverly Hills Sultry palette. The one next to it is a little bit peachier. It has a tiny bit of a sheen to it. This is from the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette in the shade Tempera. And the one next to it is the shade Light from the Stila Soul palette. And the last shade, just pushing the boundary between cream and peach, is Flower Child by Tarte from the In Bloom palette. These are the 4 champagne shades that I own. I honestly thought I owned more. This first one here is Kitten by Stila. I have it in the Soul palette. This next one is Sands of Time from Milani from the Bold Obsessions palette. This one right here is Starry Eyed by Makeup Geek. And this one here is Pearl from Anastasia Beverly Hills. The Pearl shade is a little bit chunkier. It definitely requires a lot more building. Makeup Geek Starry Eyed is by far the most pink champagne. This third one, Sands of Time, is the most gold. It's kind of like a white gold champagne. And then this fourth one, Kitten, is kind of a mixture of these two shades. It's got a little bit of pink, a little bit of gold. These are my red eyeshadows, and I have them broken into mattes and shimmers. This first one is a single by Anastasia Beverly Hills in Morocco. The second shade is Girl by Dose of Colors. It's from the Friendcation palette. The third one is Red Ochre by Anastasia Beverly Hills from the Modern Renaissance palette, and the one next to it is also from the same palette in the shade Venetian Red. You can see Red Ochre is a little bit more red, and Venetian Red is a little bit more plummy purplier. The bottom has all of my shiny red shades. The first one is from the Milani Bold Obsessions palette. It's called Red Between the Lines. And it's odd because in the palette it looks very purple. I'm not sure if you can see that, but that's the shade Swatched, and that's what it looks like in the pan. I feel like it looks a lot more purple in the pan than it does on my hand. The next shade is Blazing Hot, again from the Bold Obsessions palette from Milani. I think the shade above it, Gold Getter, is supposed to be the same formula, but I think that the formula for Blazing Hot is way better. The one next to it is Try Me from the Dose of Colors Friendcation palette. The one next to it is from the Colored Rain Queen of Hearts palette in the shade Noblewoman. And this last one is a single from Tarte in the shade Revel. I didn't realize I had so many red shades. I certainly don't use these on a regular basis, but I probably should make an effort to do so, being as I have 9 red. These are my coral and pink eyeshadows that I own. This first one over here is Rose Quartz by Anastasia Beverly Hills from the Sultry palette. Really, really gorgeous rose gold color. This next one is Vermeer from the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette. Not as metallic, not as reflective as Rose Quartz, but still a really pretty shimmery light pinky champagne color. This shade right here is a matte color from the Anastasia Beverly Hills Sultry palette in the shade Bloom. The one next to it is a single from ColourPop in the shade Wait For It. You'll notice Wait For It is a lot more coral, and Bloom is a lot more of a pinky raspberry shade. The second shade is from the Strobe Cosmetics Creepy Cute palette. It's a matte pastel pink shade. Really pretty. It's in the shade Strawberry Milk. And this first one here, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see it as well. It's a very, very, very light pink, very close to my skin tone. This is from the Milani Most Love Mattes palette, and this is in the shade Come Up Roses. So you see, I don't really have a ton of pinks, but I feel like I have a variety of finishes and undertones, so I think I'm good with this for now. These are my orange eyeshadows. This first one up top is a single from Stilazzi in the shade MS27. The middle one up top is Makeup Geek's Morocco. It's a single. The one next to it is from the Colored Rain Queen of Hearts palette in the shade Empress. The one on the bottom is Realgar from the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette. This middle one on the bottom is a shade from the e.l.f. Modern Metals palette. It's the 7th shade in, next to the blue shade. And the one next to it is from the Milani Most Loves Matte palette in the shade Hiking in Sedona. I would say the Milani and e.l.f. shades look very similar, and up top, Morocco and Empress look very similar as well. So I'll be sure to keep that in mind when I do my next declutter. I didn't realize I had so many orange shadows that were so similar in tone and depth. These are all of the gold eyeshadows that I have in my collection. This first one here might be a little bit hard to see because it's very close to my skin tone. This is a shade from the e.l.f. Modern Metals palette. It's the 2nd shade in the palette. They're not individually named. This next one is Primavera from the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance. This middle one right here is Funny Girl from the Tarte in Bloom palette, and it's a little bit drier. It's not as creamy as I would want it to be, but it's still really nice. This fourth one is Vitality from Stila. Once again, another one of my favorites. Really creamy formula, very wearable, flattering gold for my skin tone. And then this last one up top is from the Dose of Colors Friendcation palette. It's in the shade Just a Kiss. This is more of a topper. It has like a clear base, and then it's just a bunch of golden shimmer. It's really, really pretty. Now for these top 4, this first one is Steampunk. This is from the Anastasia Beverly Hills Sultry palette. I haven't tried this on my eyes yet, but it's really pretty. It swatches really nicely, and if it's anything like the other shimmers from the Anastasia Beverly Hills formula, then I know I'm going to like it. This next shade is Gold Getter from the Milani Bold Obsessions palette, and this formula is really crumbly. It's one of the hardest formulas that I have to work with in my collection. It is really pretty. It makes for a beautiful gold liner, but it is hard to work with because it's quite chunky. This next one is another gold shade from the e.l.f. Modern Metals palette. I'm currently trying to hit pan on this in my Pan Those Eyeshadows project right now. It's a very smooth and more satiny, shimmery gold, and it's really pretty. And this last one here is my favorite gold formula that I have in my collection. It's from the Colored Rain Queen of Hearts palette, and it's in the shade Your Majesty. These are all of my peach shades. They're all matte, and they range from more browny, pinky peaches down to more yellowy cantaloupe colors. This first one is My Daily Latte. This is from the Milani Most Loved Matte palette, and it's the browniest peach that I own. It might even be considered just a really pale brown, but I feel like it still has a little bit of a peachy undertone. This next one is once again from the Milani Most Loved Matte palette. It's the You're a Peach shade. The next one is very close to it. I would consider them to be dupes because they're very similar. This is from the Dose of Colors Friendcation palette. It's in the shade Basic. The next one is from the Colored Rain Queen of Hearts palette, and it's in the shade Air. This one right here is a ColourPop single in the shade Issues. And this last one is the orange shade from the Strobe Cosmetics Creepy Cute palette in the shade Third Eye. It's just pastel enough and just kind of cantaloupe enough for me to consider it to be a peach more so than a straight up orange. These are my yellow eyeshadows, and I honestly didn't even realize how many yellow shadows I owned until I did this video. This first one is a ColourPop single in the shade Tiki, very much a primary yellow color. The one next to it is a NYX single in the shade Cougar. This middle one here is the least yellowy yellow shade that I own, especially when you swatch it next to the other ones. It is the shade Golden Ochre from Anastasia Beverly Hills from the Modern Renaissance palette. The one next to it is Paper Tiger by ColourPop. And the one next to that one, which looks very similar, is the yellow shade from the e.l.f. Cosmetics Modern Metals palette. And then this last one is a Stilazzi single. It's the MS27 shade. It doesn't have a name, it just has a number. But those are all of the yellows that I own. I'm currently trying to pan this shade right here, Cougar by NYX. And I'm having some trouble with it because I don't really wear yellows that often, but I'll try. I don't have a lot of green eyeshadows, but I did want to split them into two categories. The first category is going to be my olive greens. I feel like at the beginning of the year, I just started seeing olive green everywhere all of a sudden, and I do want to try some more formulas. So if you have any favorite olive greens that you think I should try, please let me know. I'm very curious. This first one is from the e.l.f. Modern Metals palette. It's the third shade in. It's a really pretty kind of like browny olive. Whenever you first apply it, it's more gold than green, but if you keep building, it'll build up to be more of an olive green color. These next two are singles from NYX. These ones take a lot of building. They don't swatch very well, and I did have to go over and reapply multiple times for them to show like a lot of pigment. This first one is After Party. It's a little bit more of like a grungier, more cool toned green. The one next to it is Spellbound. It's more of like a yellowy true olive green. These are both satin. And then the last one is from the Dose of Colors Friendcation palette in the shade Dirty Money. This one is really pretty. I would even consider it to be kind of like a duochrome. It's got a darker green base and then a really, really pretty yellow gold shift to it. These are the other greens that I have in my collection. These first two shades are mattes from the Strobe Cosmetics Creepy Cute palette. This first one is a mint green in the shade Creep It Real. This next one is Take a Hint, more of a lime green. This middle one is a Clionadh Cosmetics single in the shade Emerald. Really, really pretty bright green. Kind of got like a lime aspect to it. And then these next two shades are from the Stila Duo in the Jade version. So they're not individually named, they're just both from the Jade Duo. This is the left side and this is the right side. They look really pretty on camera, and in looks they do look really pretty, but I do not like the formula of these at all. I do not recommend buying them. This first shade hits hard pan basically every time I dip my brush in it or put my finger in it, and I feel like it just is too hard of a formula and it really needs to be built up to get pigment. And this next one has so much fallout. It's really hard to work with and pack on without being a complete mess. Glitter from my eyes falls onto my face throughout the day every time I wear this, and it's just too much of a hassle. The colors are gorgeous, but it's just too much of a hassle to wear those on a regular basis. So these are my other greens that I don't consider to be olives. These are all of my blue shades. This first one here is a pastel blue from the Strobe Cosmetics Creepy Cute palette. It's in the shade Cold Shoulder. This next one here is a almost duochrome shimmery shade from Clionadh. It's in the shade Clairvoyance. It's got a more teal blue base and then more of a greeny gold shift to it. It's really, really pretty. I'm hoping you can pick up the reflect on that. It's really, really pretty. Very much reminds me of like a mermaid or something. This shade in the middle is from the Dose of Colors Friendcation palette. It's in the shade A Moment. It's kind of got like a blue and purple shift to it at the same time. I would consider it to be more of a blue than a purple, but I guess it could go in either category. And these next three are kind of like navy teetering into like blackish blue colors. This shade right here is the blue shade from the e.l.f. Modern Metals palette. This one right here is from the Milani Bold Obsessions palette. It's in the shade Smoke Signals. And this last shade right here is from the Dose of Colors Friendcation palette, and it's in the shade Game Over. It's got a very blackened gray type of base to it, but then it has more of a slate blue, I guess, slate blue type of reflect to it. It's really pretty. When I was putting together the swatch order and the list of all my purple shadows, I thought I had some type of strategy, some rhyme or reason. Typically I sort it into light to dark or cool and warm or matte and metallic, and don't really have any exact rhyme or reason for this one, so I hope that's alright. Right here we have Buon Fresco from Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette. The second one is Petal Pusher from Makeup Geek. It's a single. This next one is Love Letter from the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette. This one is Ladyship from the Colored Rain Queen of Hearts palette. This shade is ColourPop's 143. This is a single. These two shades, I don't know if it's just because purples are typically harder to formulate or what, but these ones were really dry. Like, they took a lot to get a decent color swatch on my arm. The next one is the purple shade from the e.l.f. Modern Metals palette. Next one is No Plum Intended. This is from the Milani Most Loves Matte palette. These two shades right here are pastel shades. This first one is Planchet. It's from the Strobe Cosmetics Creepy Cute palette. The next one is a little bit more of a warmer toned. These two shades I would say are the same level of depth, but Planchet is a lot more cool toned and this one is more warm toned. This is a single from ColourPop in the shade Howlin'. These two are metallic shades. This first one is Daydreamer by Makeup Geek. It's a little bit warmer. Still a cool tone purple, but just a little bit warmer than the next one. This is from Clionadh. It's a single in the shade Filigree. The one next to it is more of a satin shimmer. It's a ColourPop single in the shade Double Date. And this last one here is a shimmer shade from the Colored Rain Queen of Hearts palette in the shade Queen Mother. These shades are my mid-tone purples, my mid-tone mauves. The top part almost pulls even a little bit pinky orangey on my skin tone. And then the bottom are the true cool tone purple mauve shades. The top shade right here is Bust a Mauve. This is from the Milani Most Loves Matte palette. The middle shade is Sweetheart from the Tarte Litten Bloom palette. And the last shade up top is Princess from the Colored Rain Queen of Hearts palette. On the bottom we have Heart from the Stila Soul palette. Buon Fresco from the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette. And Petal Pusher, which is a Makeup Geek single. I have so many brown eyeshadows. I did not realize how many chocolatey, deeper brown shadows I owned. So I'm going to split it up into cool tones and warm tone browns. And obviously this is more of the cool tones. I started with the 3 crease shades and then ended with the deeper shades that I would use on like my outer corner or to deepen up an eye look. This first one is Jet Setter. It's from the Tarte in Bloom palette. The next one is Warm Taupe. It's from the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette. The third one is Twig. It's from the Anastasia Beverly Hills Sultry palette. This shade right here is Being. It's from the Stila Soul palette. The next one is Activist. This is from the Tarte in Bloom palette. The one after it is Chocolate is Life from the Milani Most Loves Mattes palette. The one after it is Brunettes Have Fun. This is from the Milani Bold Obsessions palette. The next one is once again from Milani. It's from the Most Loves Matte palette. in the shade Don't Raisin Your Voice. If you can see, this one has a slight purpley type of undertone. The next to last one is Dystopian. This is from the Anastasia Beverly Hills Sultry palette. And the very last one is Character, once again from the Stila Soul palette. This one, I'm not sure if you can tell, but it has a very odd chunky glitter to it. It's a matte shade just with chunky glitter in it. I don't like that shade. But these are all of my cool toned brown shades in my collection. I have an egregious amount of warm brown eyeshadows, so I'm going to split it into 3 categories. This first one is light to mid-toned warm browns. This first one is a matte. It acts like a matte, but it does have a slight sheen to it, maybe more of a satin shade. This is Bear in Mind from the Milani's Bold Obsession palette. The second one is the shade Individual from the Stila Soul palette. The third one is the shade Sweet as Honey from Milani's Most Loved Mattes palette. The fourth one is Smarty Pants from the Tarte Bloom palette. The fifth one is the shade Necessary from the Dose of Colors Friendcation palette. And the last one is Birch from the Anastasia Beverly Hills Sultry palette. You can see those last 2 shades are very similar. I would say Birch is a little bit more yellow. Necessary is a tiny bit more orange. The next set of shadows are my mid to deep warm brown shadows. This first color is Toast of the Town. This is from the Milani Most Loved Mattes palette. The next one is Raw Sienna. This is from the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette. The middle one is Royal Prerogative. This is from the Colored Rain Queen of Hearts palette. This fourth shade right here is Catch a Tan. This is from the Milani Most Loved Mattes palette. This fifth shade is Burnt Orange from the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette. And this shade right here, I meant to put it in my deeper brown category, but this is the shade Churro from the Dose of Colors Friendcation palette. And the last section of my warm brown category is these 7 shades right here. This one I meant to put in the last one. I switched it out with Dose of Colors Churro. This is from the e.l.f. Modern Metals palette. It's I think it's the 7th shade in. No, it's the 6th shade in. Sorry, they're not named, so I can't give you like an actual shade name. The next one is from the Tarte Bloom palette. It's the shade Revel. The next shade is from the same palette. It's the shade Leader. The next one is from the Milani Most Loved Mattes palette. It's in the shade Umber the Sun. This one right here is from the Colored Rain palette. It's the shade Duchess. Second to last one is from the Dose of Colors Friendcation palette. It's in the shade Cheens. And this last one, it's Cypress Umber from the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette. And now for the age-old question, which brand makes the best black? This first one here is from the Stila Soul palette in the shade Essence. Keep in mind this palette is like 5 years old, so the pigment might just be changing a little bit because of its age. Still a pretty good black. Second one is Smoke Show from the Tarte Bloom palette. This middle one is Little Black Dress. This is from the Milani Bold Obsessions palette. This fourth shade is Void from the Strobe Cosmetics Creepy Cute palette. And this one right here, clearly the winner, is the shade Noir from the Anastasia Beverly Hills Sultry palette. These are all really good quality black shadows, but obviously Noir is the winner. This one is a little bit more complicated, but these are my favorite types of eyeshadows. I love these types of shimmery shades with a little bit of a bronze or a taupe or a copper. Great one eyeshadow all over the lid types of shades. So I broke them into 3 main categories. The first 3 are more cool toned. This first one is Rocker from Tarte. It's from the In Bloom palette. The second one is from the Stila Soul palette. These next 2 are actually, this one is Thought and this is Substance. Substance is clearly much more gray toned. Next we're going to move over into the more orange, gold, brown, bronzy shades. This fourth shade, it's a satin. It's from the Milani Bold Obsessions palette. It's in the shade Suede Side to Side. The last one is Cinder. It's an Anastasia Beverly Hills shadow from the Sultry palette, as is the next one. This is a very unique shade in my collection. This is the shade Ember. It's kind of got like an antique bronze kind of shade. I don't know how to explain it, but it's beautiful. Next one is the bronze shade from the e.l.f. Modern Metals palette. It is the 5th shade in the palette, kind of like a satin metallic shade. The third one is a very metallic shade from the Anastasia Beverly Hills Sultry palette. This one is in the shade Teak. The next one is Firecracker. This is from Tarte. It's from the In Bloom palette. The next one is Royal Highness. This is from the Colored Rain Queen of Hearts palette. This is a beautiful, beautiful color. I really like that shade a lot. Now these bottom ones, we're airing more into the reddish bronzes, kind of like the burgundy bronze colors. This one right here, I apologize for the awkward placing of the swatches, but this shade right here is from the Stila palette. It's in the shade Affection. This next one is also from the Stila In Soul palette. It's the shade Peace. The second to last one is Antique Bronze by Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette. And this gorgeous rich chocolate brown with gold shimmer is Dethroned. It's from the Colored Rain Queen of Hearts palette. I'll give you a little bit more of a closer look. These are pretty shades. They're all either satin or metallic. And these are my favorite types of eyeshadows to play with. And lastly, we have duochromes. I freaking love duochrome shades. I know Clionadh Cosmetics is coming out with multi-chrome shades, and I definitely plan on picking up a couple. I really like her formula so far. So this first one is from Clionadh. It's one of my most unique shades that I have. It is in the shade Aqua Vitae, and if you can see, it has a blue base, but then it has a yellow gold, like a white gold shift to it. It's really pretty. I really like this shade a lot. The next two shades are duochromes that have more of a white or cream base, and then their shift is like the color that comes off the most. So this shade right here is from Makeup Geek. It's a single and it's called Phantom. And it has a whiter base, and then it shifts into a purple ultraviolet type of color. This is really pretty for the inner corner. Same with this shade. This is Crown from the Colored Rain Queen of Hearts palette. It has a cream base, and then it has kind of like a peachy gold shift. This next color is a single from Urban Decay in the shade Fireball. It's got a orangey brown base with fiery pink shifts to it. And the one next to it is Prophecy. This is from Clionadh. It has a hot pink fuchsia base with a orangey gold shift. It's really pretty. This next one, I'm not entirely sure if it's technically a duochrome, but it's from the Dose of Colors Friendcation palette, and it's the shade Try Me. I think it has kind of like a browny reddish base, and then it has gold glitter on top of it. I think it's really pretty, and I think that's a duochrome. This shade right here is a single from ColourPop. It's the shade Glass Bowl. It has a reddy brown base, and then it has hints of green and pink and gold in the shift. The next one is a single liquid shadow. It's from Butter London, and it's in the shade Oil Slick. It has a reddish brown base, and then the shift is hints of green, pink, purple, blue, and I do have a tutorial using the shade if you're curious how to work with it. This shade right here is a single from Clionadh. It's the shade Arcana? I'm not sure. It has kind of like a purple mauve base, and then it has light blue shift to it. It's really pretty. This one right here is Hot Pants. It's a Makeup Geek single. It has a hot fuchsia base, and then it has light blue and purple specks in it. And this one right here is a Glitter and Glow shadow from Stila. It's in the shade Sea Siren. Once again, it has like a fuchsia purple base, and then it has blue and pink and silvery gold flecks in it. I'd like to warn you to be careful with that Stila Sea Siren shadow. Please use a primer, or just beware that it is going to stain your skin wherever you apply it. Thanks so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed me swatching and color categorizing all of my eyeshadows. Let me know once again if you'd like me to do it with any other category in my makeup collection. But in the meantime, that's everything I have. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys!